Hello and welcome. My name is Dmitry Markolov, aka at Dmitry Make Love, and you're listening to an episode of Faucets of Reality, a show in which we explore, learn about, and grow our understanding of what it is to be human at this time. And with that, let's begin.
What's up, Stace? How's it going?
Hi, Dimitri. I'm doing very well. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for joining me on my podcast, Faucets of Reality, where uh, we try to see reality from different perspectives, and especially now I'm trying to have more artists on here, and you're one of the first artists I thought of.
Mm.
Not just because you're my cousin and we've known each other for a very long time, actually, but also because I'm really inspired by your creative output, and it seems to me like you really put a lot of your energy towards making art, and it seems to have a really great message behind it. So I'm really excited to have you on. So yeah, I just want to maybe ask you about how like, when did you first start noticing art in your life as something that inspires you, or something that caught your attention, or something that you felt drawn to?
hmm
How is, like, what was your first, I guess, art type influences, if that makes sense?
Influences. Well, I guess interestingly, I don't know if other people relate to this, but for me, I feel as though I started drawing and like doodling first. Like are, are my mom and your father are artists, and I think that
Hmm.
definitely trickled down. So like when I was a kid, my mom bought me paint sets and like the crayons and all the things. So I just remember always doing it, and I don't think I really thought about like as a kid, you don't really think about whether you're doing it well or doing it right. I was just doing it, and it's just like how I spent most of my time, just drawing and painting and having fun with it and moving colors around.
Hmm.
And as I like high school, and so I didn't really stick with it, but that's like a really core memory of my child of being a child. But in high school, I kind of somehow found myself going back into doodling. And there's this website, I don't know if you remember, I've been thinking about it lately, but Stumble Upon. Did you ever?
Yes, of course. I remember Stumble Upon. Yeah.
So Stumble Upon was this website that you go in and you say all the things that you are interested in, and then you press a button and it will bring you to random websites of the internet.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. It's kind of like like it was like the first Pinterest in a way, right? Like, I feel like that's what
yeah,
Pinterest is now.
yeah, but I feel like it was even cooler because it would bring you to these website pages of like web pages that you probably would have never found otherwise. Like
Right.
Pinterest is very like image based, and it's like a kind of has become like a social media now, but it would like just bring you to these new pages of the internet. So you're really exploring, and I think through there I started stumbling upon like art, and I was definitely inspired by it, but I wasn't putting it into practice, but I knew it was something that was like attracting me. And so
Hmm.
I I really loved it, but I wasn't practicing it. I was doodling a lot, like late at night I would doodle. And even like I feel when I was creating my MySpace page, I would
Hmm.
get kind of artistic with it, but
Yeah.
once again, I wasn't creating my own stuff in such a like sit down way. And so I kept finding myself like going towards art. And when in my early 20s, I started taking classes for it. I first got into graphic design, and graphic design was like, I was like, it's like almost there, but it's like not quite there. And so
Hmm.
then I took more classes, and there was something in the back of my head that always told me that I should take a painting class. And um, I moved to Northern California, and I was going there for graphic design, but I noticed they had a lot of really nice like art classes. And so I was looking at the art teachers there, and there was this painting teacher there. Her name was Gina Tuzzi.
Mhm.
And I just looked at her website and I was like, oh my gosh, she's so amazing. She's so talented. Like, if I could paint, this is what I aspire to do. And so she was teaching painting two. So I had to take a painting one to get to her for painting two. And
Mm.
it was once I started like actively creating art, that's when I started to appreciate other people's art more. And
Mhm.
that's when I kind of started like slowing down and taking in other people's art because I was like, oh my gosh, like now that I'm practicing it and doing it, I realize how difficult it is to create the pieces that we see out in the world. And I
Mhm.
started to,
Mhm.
it's like as soon as I did the practice and was doing the work, that's when I started to, yeah, definitely appreciate other artists. I was like following way more artists and taking it in and kind of being like, wow, like, yeah, that's basically when I just started taking in other influences and was like,
Okay,
wait, I can have.
I was just sorry. I was just about to say, like, slow down. You're going so fast. Like, I feel like that was like your whole life in a nutshell, you know? We like I wanted to talk more about like the beginnings a little more if
Okay.
we could like jump into that. So first of all, for the listeners, my father and your mother, they're brother and sister, and we share a grandmother. And so
Hmm.
for me, like I feel as though Zoya, she is kind of like a matriarch in a way. She's still alive. She's 95 right now, right? And I feel like, we do kind of go back to her in terms of like our artistic aspirations, both me and you. So
Hmm.
would you say that she inspired you in maybe a direct or indirect way? Because well for me like I
I
actually haven't seen her art myself that much. Like I feel like I haven't really seen her art, but I know she really was an artist for a while, right? So like do you know more
hmm
about that or
Yeah, so in she was raised and grew up during Soviet Union time, so that was a
Mhm.
time where women had specific roles. And she was actually the only, I believe she was one of seven. She was one of the youngest, or like six or five, or a lot of siblings though. And she was the only one that went to school, and she had a job creating costumes for the Russian
Mhm.
theater,
Yep.
which so that was already like such a big, I feel like, pivot in our family line, because she was like, no, I'm not gonna just stay home and be this whatever is expected from me. I'm gonna do what is calling to me. And clearly that is like a creative,
Wow.
um
Yep.
yeah, like, and
Didn't
that
she
takes a
she lived
lot
on
of.
a farm, didn't she? And she moved to the city to pursue like art and go to college and
Yes,
stuff,
yes,
right?
I forgot about that.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I believe um she did that when she was younger, which is like also just really, that must have been really scary too. And she was definitely breaking a lot of patterns in the family, patterns
Mm.
of society, what was
Wow.
expected of her versus
Yeah.
like. So I think that it's funny because I've gotten into like sewing lately, and I think of that's when she inspires me. Like I think I didn't realize her influence on me earlier, but when I sew, I'm like, oh wow, like this comes straight from my grandmother. And my mom, when I was a young girl, my mom would sew, and she would tell me stories about how all the young girls in Russia were wearing skirts, but she just wasn't comfortable in them. So she would sew herself pants with lots of pockets. And that was like really weird for women to be wearing pants. And other women would go up to her and she would do like customs for them. So I think it's like that was grandmother influencing my mom. And then I see how now that's like trickling down to me as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
So cool. Yeah, that's like a multi-generational artist. Like like our family has really invested a lot into this. And
Hmm.
I just gotta say, out of everyone in our family, like even my siblings, your siblings, like I feel as though you have actually like braved that path like more than
Mm.
anyone else. Like and yeah, I mean, if the room you're in right now, and I see like there's your paintings in the background, and it's like such a an amazing like image of just like how you made your own world, so to speak, and
Yeah.
they're really beautiful. Yeah, like it's amazing work. I'm like whoa, because
Thank you.
for sure.
Also,
Mhm.
also another side influence is I actually do think of your father a lot, and I think growing up, I was just so used to being in the world that my mom was creating art and she did like tile work, but your father was also drawing really incredibly well and painting, and he kind of also like dipped into jobs that had to do with painting, whether it was
Yeah.
even like painting apartments and houses. And then I feel like my mom would show me your father's work, and I do find myself lately thinking about him
Um,
and just being like, this is part of like the line, like he was the painter. And
yes,
yeah.
yes. And for sure, he inspired me, a ton. It's almost been 2 years since he passed away now,
Wow.
and greatly, greatly missed. But yeah, I remember, he just had like a certain sensitivity to like,
Yeah.
to colors, and just the way he saw the world was like very fine. And he was a painter himself, and I heard like stories where he ran away from home when he was 15, and he would kind of like go on the streets and he would paint things and then sell those paintings
Wow.
for money, like right
Wow.
there. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And he's definitely like quite a paradox. Like there's, a lot to get into, but basically, yeah, I know that also like his father was a director, a movie director,
Mm.
and our grandmother was a costume, like person made costumes, right? And I feel like they worked at the same movie studio, Mosfilm, I believe, in
Yes.
Moscow,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And from what I understand, as the story goes, both my parents, they met working there,
Wow.
so I do feel, I'm always asking like, what am I like? What am I here to do? But it's like it's right there, it's pretty obvious. And for everyone listening, like, what you are, what you have to do. And I think we're all artists, we all should
Yeah.
be using our creativity to make the world a better place. I mean, that's kind
Yeah.
of like the best thing about art. And yeah, thank you for kind of, mentioning him a bit, because he's definitely been a huge inspiration for me. And I feel like he left a lot of work undone that like I'm continuing now,
Mm-hmm.
in my own way, maybe. But
Yeah.
yeah, and so, my own like first memories of you were, again, for everyone who doesn't know, like I am a first generation immigrant. I was 7 years old when we moved to Brooklyn, New York, and then little by little we moved to Rockland when I was 14, Rockland County, which is upstate. I was Suffering, New York. If anyone knows, shouting it out. There was a MySpace group called Suffering and Suffering. I remember it was so emo. I love that you brought MySpace up, by the way. And so basically, I just remember we, for the first time, we had like this yard, and I made some friends, some neighbors, and we kind of made this little, like little club, so to speak, where basically, we kind of let our imagination run wild, and it was called Spike. And I know you were a part of that, where I was really inspired by movies and like video games and anime and like Legend of Zelda and stuff like that, where we kind of pretended we were like this group of like warriors or something, like sword fighters, and we'd look for sticks. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And we would like kind of like spar. We would get ready for like a battle or something like that.
Mm-hmm. I
And
remember, well, it's also because I was living in my house maybe 40 minutes or an hour away. And I grew
Mhm.
up also having a yard. And I kind of found myself alone a lot growing up, but also with my older sister, Maria, who's a couple years older and your age.
We
Um,
love Maria. Shout out Maria.
Maria, we do love Maria.
Mhm.
And so I was in my backyard also kind of being on these like adventures and getting lost in my own brain. And so then coming to your house where it just like continues. And I
Mm.
remember we would look into like talking about auras and like spells and like Ouija
Yes.
board. So
And
this it
psychic
all
stuff. Mm-hmm.
and psychic stuff. And I remember the initiative for Spike was you putting me through these tests, and I have like a mere like a good memory of one of the things was like I was blindfolded, my eyes were, I think you blindfolded me, and I had to like stop the stick at whatever side it was coming up on with my eyes closed. So I had to like know
Yeah.
what side it was coming on. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember like after the test was done, you were like, you aced that. You're like, what the hell? Like you're like, I didn't think this would.
That's
You're like, what
so
the heck?
funny. I remember
But
that.
I
Yeah,
feel
because
like it honestly just really like grounded in how the things that I do now of like my intuition and me being into psychic stuff and me creating this world, like it all really fueled my current day.
right, right. Because back then I remember out of all the cousins, like me and you, we like got along right away. Like we were like
Yeah.
super close, and
Yeah.
you would just come over sometimes just because, and we would hang out, we would talk about all this like weird stuff we were into. I think like that's kind of where spiritual cousins was born in a way. Like me and you were like, like
Yeah.
trendsetters. Like we did this before maybe some of our other, I don't know, but I don't know how to say it, but basically, yeah, I
Maria was
mean,
there too sometimes, but
yeah, yeah,
I
but
was
Maria
definitely
was,
coming over like
yeah,
all the time by myself.
you were, yeah, and it was so fun. I remember there was like Weird New York. I don't know if that was around that
Yes.
time.
Yeah.
And then yeah, we would talk about all this stuff, and I was also into like all these things that were kind of, like mysterious, and things that people didn't really know about. Like I was always
Yeah.
into that stuff, and I was always like, I don't know, I had a friend that we were trying like all this psychic stuff. I think you were coming around that time too. And also, yeah, like we had this little group of kind of like my friend Kyle May, my friend Jared, like we kind of formed this group where we would like kind of like look for sticks, and like and that was also like such a magical moment because you had to find the right stick like for battle. I mean, do you remember Mango, like that legendary
Oh
stick that I had?
wow. Yeah.
Mango,
Oh my
right? Right?
gosh.
It's so
Oh
funny
my
that
god.
you're bringing it up. Anyways, yeah, that one, like I had to like initiate people into it. So it's like that's when I remember when you were there and you were really like, I don't know, you wanted to be a part of it. And I was like, okay, well, we're gonna have to test you. We're gonna have to see if you can, if you're gonna like if you're gonna do well or whatever, if you're worth it or whatever, right? And I gave you that test, and honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, I think I got the inspiration from Star Wars. By the
Yeah.
way, didn't you just watch the Star Wars movies recently? You were telling me,
I
right?
did, yes, watched all of them, which is funny because Star Wars is very interlaced with like growing up with you. But I didn't
Yes.
see all of them in order. We saw, I think, like two in the theaters, the second one in the theaters.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But it was around that time that it's like Star Wars was big
Hmm.
again. Like episode two, I
Yeah.
think, was coming out,
Hmm.
and lightsabers and all of that, right? That
Yes.
was a big inspiration for. You remember that scene, right, when Luke Skywalker is like learning how to be a Jedi and use the Force,
Hmm.
and he like blindfolded him,
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's I think that's why I did that with you. It was like a Star Wars like homage thing. I mean, I don't know consciously or not, but when you're a kid, like you kind of pick up things from everywhere and you try to
Yeah.
like live it out. Like you try this, you try that. And in a way, like I think being an artist is like kind of holding on to that part of you that
Definitely.
is kind of malleable and that you can kind of like change things if you want to, and you're not so stuck. And so yeah, just working from your imagination, right?
I
And
think being
so,
an artist recently has been a lot about connecting with my inner child.
mm,
And so I do think about those moments that have built who I am, but I've kind of got away from it for a bit. And even though that's like my intuition and seeing the world differently and seeing the world in play is like such a big part of who I am. So it's been
mhm.
definitely interesting reconnecting with that inner child and realizing like that's who I've been this whole time. And now as an adult, I have to just figure out how to bring that out.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's something that even if you kind of like maybe lose a connection with, it's still always there, you know.
Yeah.
And I almost feel like a lot of maybe people's problems come from the fact that they've like shunned, you know, their child. And actually, I was just reading about like the dark side of psychology, right? Which is kind of like we all have, you know, who we were as a child. A lot of the times it wasn't like accepted by society or by your parents, and so you learn to repress it, right? You learn to like
Yeah.
not show it, and because of that, it causes a lot of like problems that you're not are not aware of. You know,
Yeah.
you don't even know how you're affecting people negatively sometimes. You know, because it's not in your conscious. Like you're not. It's kind of like suppressed or repressed or behind
Yeah.
your unconscious kind of thing. So, you know, a lot of healing, like you know, people talk about shadow work. It's like bringing that out into your conscious so you can work with it. You know, any way that you can,
Mm-hmm.
and I think art is literally like the tool for that. Like, you know.
Yeah.
And speaking of which,
Definitely.
so you also had I wanted to talk a little bit about the message of your art because I feel as though it's very inspirational and like something I know is like that's kind of I've heard that that's the most important thing in art is like the message you're trying to relay or you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to tell other people. And so, yeah, how did you come up with Metamorphosis, like that name, and what does that mean to you?
So, um, probably around the time that I started taking like graphic design stuff, I started, I guess, at being a graphic designer. I was looking at the messages in the world a lot closer, and I realized that so many of them were just so negative, and I just wanted to be someone who like uplifts people and so I was like, I want to put out messages. It all started with wanting to put messages on t-shirts. And then I found out um how t-shirts are made, and we use about like 2,000 liters of water just to grow cotton for one t-shirt. And it's just and then think about all the clothes that go into waste. And so I was thinking about this and I was like, I don't want to. And this was probably 2014. People
Mm,
weren't really talking about upcycling. I was buying stuff secondhand, but it wasn't popular at all. And I was just like, if I'm going to put stuff for positive things for the world, I want it to come from an authentic place and that means also thinking about the earth and the world. So I better do this on secondhand things. And also, even going back to the childhood, I just always loved being outside. I loved being in my backyard. I would imagine that I was like in the mountains, and
mm-hmm.
I just
Yep.
always felt really connected to earth. And I've always just like, I would just sit in my backyard. I love touching grass. I had this tiny creek in the backyard that I would like jump around and imagine it was this huge river. So when I found out all the things happening just because we're making new clothes, I was like, oh my gosh, like, how am I going to put love out into the world without thinking about earth too? Like, that's so selfish. I've always known that it's all one. Like, what we do to earth, what we do to ourselves, what we do to one another, it's affecting all of us. So I was playing with different ideas of I remember I had it like second chances and what it would mean to use like upcycled and reusing things. And I had this idea and I put it on the shelf. And in 2015, my best friend from who I've known since I was like 7, she suddenly passed away, and that kind of just like shifted my whole world. And this person who's been part of my life and just basically family was gone, and I realized this like the many truths of life and grief, going through grief and loss, but also within that grief and loss, just like finding so much love and so much light and trusting myself in that journey and in the process. And really picking up my own pieces, I think I was just thinking about like the journey and the using what we already have, and which was something I did for grief, and the process and the journey. So I started to think about the metamorphosis and just like how it starts. You don't start as a butterfly. You start as a caterpillar, and even before that, and you have to go through your own metamorphosis and your own journey, your own darkness in the cocoon.
100%. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so it's like the butterfly uses everything it already has to go through this process. And so it just like one day came to me and I was like, metamorphosis, that's what it is. I have the clothes with but I have the clothes that I that already are here, and I'm like creating a new journey with them. And also it became a representation of me going through my own mind, taking through the darkness, going through the grief, really sitting with all this darkness that I have, and slowly figuring out how to become the butterfly.
That's perfect. That's so beautiful. I love like just that congregation of ideas, of like making the world a better place, and also kind of going through that transformation of like, the self transformation where
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you do have to, be in the cocoon for a while. Sometimes you do have to retreat a little bit, in order to kind of step fully into who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you have to kind of, yeah, like kind of go into a bit of a dark place. I mean, the seed, when you have to put it in earth, right? You have to put it in a very
Yeah.
dark place. And out of that dark
Mm-hmm.
place, it starts to grow and sprout and look for the sun and look for the light.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's so almost paradoxical, like it's an enigma, right? Like logically it's there's no way to understand it. Like logically we think of things as like negative and positive, right? Like good and bad, like this is the right way to go and this is the wrong way to go. But
Mm-hmm.
really you need both of those things, right? They need
Yeah.
to kind of they have to come together, and they have to kind of make the stalk grow up. You need both those things, right?
100%. I was just gonna say, and because I still really love it, I really love putting like love into the world and having these positive messages, but that would have never come without the awareness of the darkness, whether
Hmm.
within myself or the awareness of the darkness of life. Like my messages don't come from wanting just to put light in the world because everything's great. It's like, no, things are really heavy, things are really dark. So when there's like the people or the moments or the messages of light, like that's when we need it the most. It's not to be
Hmm.
cheesy, it's not to be whatever, however people see it. It comes from a place of the seed of the darkness of, I know things can be really dark, so we need those moments of light, of messages of hope, of positivity with the balance of the darkness. It's you can't I don't think the positivity is authentic if you're only being positive. We need to like go through the darkness. I like to think about it as a like a mushroom that it literally, you have to grow within the darkness. You have to break up the death. You have to break up all the darkness in the soil to be able to like pop out of that dark place. And those mushrooms then allow others, like they break down the soil for the flowers to be able to sprout out and be like their beautiful flowers. Like
Exactly. Yeah. I love that you brought up mushrooms actually. It's funny. I is it true? I heard that they've been around like three times as long as like plants have been around. Like they were
mm-hmm.
actually here before plants were here, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's nuts, and how they kind of, they're such an integral part of the ecosystem that we don't always see because they are in the
Mm-hmm.
dark, aren't they? Like
Yeah.
the I just I've also done my share of like thinking about like the mushroom, right? It's such a inspirational thing in general, but like what I realized that it's like these little mushrooms that pop up, right? They all trace back to the mycelium, right? To like the
Mm-hmm.
core of all of them, right? And I think there's such an interesting allegory there towards humans also. Like I think we all kind of come back to the same source in a way, and we come out of the same place. And even though each one of us is a little different, like we're still mostly like similar. We have more in common than we have,
Yeah.
differences.
I don't know
Right?
if this theory is a little bit far-fetched, but I like to think of humans as like, so the mushroom is actually just the fruit of the mycelium. The mycelium is the main body. So think
Right.
of a tree, that's the main body of it, but the fruit, like the apple, is like an expression. It's one part of the expression of the tree. So I like to
Amazing.
think of the mushroom is the fruit of the whole subject. Each person is like an expression. We are like the fruit. Do you see my cat?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Is that Freddy Cougar?
That's Freddy Cougar. um,
Amazing.
each each
Thank you for blessing us, Kat.
yeah, with his presence. Um, each human is like an expression, is the fruit of this like main oneness,
Mhm.
and in the end we are all connected to it,
Totally.
but we all might express a little bit differently because we're all just like different fruits and having our own experiences of earth, but at the end we all are connected and we're all part of like the energy. I
We
don't know if
are,
it's
yeah, totally. No, 100%. And I mean, again, like you brought up the tree. I think the tree is such an important like symbol for life in general, and how like yeah, we're all like little leaves off of the branches off of one root. It turns out like that's the only way it makes sense. But
Mhm.
also yeah, I mean, just to kind of go back into the darkness a little bit. No, the darkness is
Mhm.
good. It's just
It is.
misunderstood. You know what I mean? It's there for a reason. It's there to teach us who we really are. It's
Mhm.
just the light, I guess, right? You could say. But yeah.
And to also connect that with what you're saying of like a child, like when you're a child and then you might have been denied who you were, and then you keep
Mm,
growing and that darkness kind of takes over you and that becomes your shadow work.
right.
I think that the only way of undoing that is truly going into the darkness and seeing like these hurts, these pains, these losses, this grief that caused us to be where we are and caused us to have these patterns, this shadow self, and all the darkness that we don't even realize. Like, I truly think the only way of changing who we are and changing the patterns and that were caused from the pain and how we might hurt others because of it is to sit with the pain of the past, is to sit with the darkness, is to sit with the
Hmm.
grief.
Yep.
That is truly how the healing and how the light can come in.
100%, and more so when you integrate your shadow, you become more of who you are. You become more real. You become
Mhm.
stronger. You become like just being conscious of those things that you're able to do. Like it would be, I don't know, I feel as though it wouldn't be right to think, of yourself as like I'm a good person. I don't hurt anyone else. I can't hurt anyone else. Where it turns out like I mean I think something that Jordan Peterson kind of brought to my attention is that we all have this ability within us to be negative, to kind of hurt
Mhm.
others.
Mhm.
And even though we might not want to, that's why it's important to like keep a connection and be open
Yeah.
to feedback and things like that, because that also like we help each other
Yeah.
become better also.
Mhm.
um
And
okay. Yeah.
sorry, like even nobody wants to hurt other people, but also without that self-awareness, like how are you hurting yourself without
Yeah,
realizing it?
for sure. Definitely, definitely, of
Mhm.
course. Because it's usually, I mean, everything is a reflection of your inner state. So it's like you can only meet others as
Mhm.
deeply as you've met yourself, right? So
Yes.
again, yes, sitting with yourself, like trying to get to that silence just by that effort of trying to sit with yourself by yourself, like quietly in silence, you're going to go through all those things, and it's
Mhm.
going to be uncomfortable and it might
Yeah.
hurt, but it's so important to like just feel it for what it is,
Yeah.
not try to like make it something else or something. And after that, you have so much inspiration for creating and for kind of
Yeah.
feeling others and helping them to get what they need,
Hmm.
and I totally like that's I mean, I'm just really glad that we're able to like, say these things. I hope that this I hope that this helps someone. I hope that whoever's listening right now,
Hmm.
like it will help you,
Hmm. And with that too, a big thing of it, because right now we're in the time of distractions. So when you are sitting with yourself, you're going to be fighting yourself, not only about feeling these feelings, but you're going to be fighting yourself with like, oh, maybe I should go check my phone. Maybe I should, all these different ways of
Totally.
things grabbing our attention. It is
Yep.
like, you have to go to the very basic step of like, okay, let me see if I can sit with myself, no distractions. Let me put a timer on for 30 seconds. Like I had
Mhm.
to start there. That has been a really big part of my creativity and getting back in touch with my creativity and as an artist
Would you say
and
that's
the
part
work.
of your message, like what you're trying to kind of relate to people through your art also?
Definitely. That's something more recently I've been thinking about how to express that message more. But
Mhm.
I think I'm not sure if I even touched upon it, but it's gone from like just being a message on clothes to now I'm like, I want people to realize that they can better themselves with what they have. So it's kind of me also sharing my progress of how I've been slowing down and how I've been getting in touch with myself through sitting with myself or through writing. Writing has been a really big one. And so that is definitely part of my message as well. As the main thing is that we need to do the work within ourselves so we can help others do the same work at their own pace, because that
Mhm.
is what's going to affect the whole world. All of us being able to sit with ourselves, do the work of going into the darkness, that is how we help one another and help the earth in entirety. Because for me, I am still always thinking, even though it seems very focused and individualized, I'm still also thinking about the bigger picture of how do we help Earth and ourselves as one.
Definitely. Well, as you're saying this, like I'm just like these things are coming through to me that I feel as though we're at a time now where like the universe and the earth is in fact asking us to like slow down, and take it
Yeah.
easy. Because all these technologies, they stem back to like the industrial age, and just this view of a person as like a worker, like a unit of work,
Mm-hmm.
someone that, even the whole public school system, I think this is becoming more clear that it's like it was made to make workers, basically. It was
Yeah.
made to just have people who are blindly following, what the person above you is saying, like your teacher, and it's completely, in my opinion, like corrupted what education is supposed to be.
Yeah.
And like, which is really like the elders kind of telling, the newer generations like the story of why we're here and what we're here to do.
Mm-hmm.
But even these technologies, like these Instagrams and these phones that we
Mm-hmm.
have, like they are so distracting. And this
Yeah.
is totally something that, I'm glad we're bringing up, we're talking about, and putting out there so people are aware that, like, even if it's just to, they make us think quicker, but like we just need to take a little time every day to just slow down. It's not that
Mm-hmm.
crazy just to kind of put the phone away. I've heard a really good like productivity hack, is like you literally like turn off your phone for 2 hours a day and you focus on like your most important task that you need to work on
Mm-hmm.
that day,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been utilizing it. It's been really,
Nice.
really, really good. And finally, what helps me and what I've been realizing, like the power of and importance of this, like not having distractions or just learning to be more focused in what you're doing, right? To output
Mm-hmm.
like your best work. For artists, it's very important, of course, but for me, it's, what really helps with that is reading
Mm-hmm.
books,
Yes.
sitting there and literally like not, oh, what's the next thing, what's the next thing, but like you're
Yes.
following this longer narrative that's like interweaving, and it's slowly, going somewhere
Building.
else. Yeah. And you have to have a sense of focus. You kind of, it trains that in you,
Yes.
and so
I'm glad.
that's been really helping me a lot. And I think I'm trying to get more people to read. I think, like, I get it. Like, you're sitting there. It's like, I have better things to do, or like I'd rather do something easy and that's gonna feel good. But a lot of times, what we want isn't what's best for us.
Yeah. And also, like, I myself will be like, oh, I don't have time for that. Like, I'm making up an excuse. And
Hmm.
then I'll look at my phone and it's like, oh, but I spent 4 hours on Instagram throughout the
Right.
day. So it's
Yep.
like, actually, I do have the time. And I'm really glad you brought that up because I think something with Instagram, it's not only a distraction, but it's teaching our brains to have that things come to us in like 5 seconds. And it's
Yep.
teaching the ADD like tendencies. And
Hmm.
so so many people I talk to are like, yeah, I think I have ADD. I think I have ADD. Well, of course. And I'm one of those people because I've been training my brain to get new excitement within 5 seconds. So I'm really glad you brought up the reading because that is something I've been thinking about is I need to train my brain to start doing longer things and slowing down. And even now where like I've always made my coffee really slow in I'm Turkish coffee way, which is you have to like slow down and sit with it. You have to make
Hmm.
sure it doesn't over pour. So these activities, even like making bread, which is most people don't have the time for that, but these activities that like something that takes your time and slowing it down and you really have to focus throughout during the holidays I was home alone. I live with my boyfriend, but I was home alone and I was creating fires for myself because um oh my goodness,
An oven
fire
or?
pit.
Oh,
Fire
okay.
pit.
Hmm.
And so it forced me, I had to slow down and like tend to this fire and build it up. And I wasn't able to have any other distraction because, or else the fire would go out and I had to start over. So these activities, and reading is so good because you do have to slow yourself down and you're building towards something and you're teaching your brain even if we are fighting it and all these things are going to be really uncomfortable and that's something I think we're in a time where like we don't get uncomfortable because we you don't even have to the media that you consume everything in your day can be curated and catered to your liking you
Hmm.
the I'm sure my news feed looks different than your news feed. Like it's like, everything is curated to what makes us comfortable and also maybe uncomfortable of like these intense reactions. But
Hmm.
that is something I'm learning. It's like it's good and it's okay to be uncomfortable and you first have to fight through the feelings of being uncomfortable before you're going to get the results that you want.
Yeah, and of course, at first it's going to be uncomfortable, but as you keep doing it, you open up such a like different
Yes.
dimension. Like it becomes such a wholesome, like really important thing for you, and you get so much out of it.
Mhm.
Yeah, every day, I like to wake up slow, and it's funny you mentioned the
Mhm.
Turkish coffee thing, which is like, that little roaster that you like kind of
Yeah.
roast. I'm guessing like your mom got my mom to do it because my mom does
Yeah.
that all the time now, right?
Oh,
I yeah, that's a good way too. I also like to wake up early, slowly. I don't like to
yeah.
just like start running or whatever. And yeah, lately I start my day and I end my day reading.
Oh,
And
that's so nice.
it's become such a thing. But it's also what I wanted to say was that like there is like a quickening, like a mental quickening happening, like kids who are labeled
Yes.
ADD or something. It's not that there's something wrong with them, you know what I mean? It's that they just think quicker. They just need more stimulation. Like they're just kind of learning in their own way. you shouldn't like put a label on them and label them
Yeah,
like something's wrong with them, right?
definitely. And it's also that they are processing actually way more information at
Right.
once. So
Exactly. Yeah.
that's where, and it's like that is a really good thing. It could be a really good thing because if you're out in the world and you're able to process everybody and see the dangers
Right.
or whatever it is, like there is a benefit to it. But I think, at least for me, it's like too many tabs open.
Yes. Yeah. And
That's how
so
my brain was feeling.
it reminds me of what we were just talking about, like the tree or the mushrooms, like there's all these fruits out there that we could
Yeah.
pick and eat, right? But we have to find that trunk. We have to find where it all connects, and we have to find what our real purpose is. And if you get to that point, then you can start being intentional with the things you're doing. Then
Yes.
you can go on
Yes.
Instagram not just because you're bored and you just need something to like, some fruit to eat, right? Something exciting that's gonna
Yeah.
like stimulate you,
Stimulation.
but you're actually going on there to, I don't know, to maybe to connect to people who are gonna be like helpful in your life, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe to have a conversation, or maybe even to like sell a service or something, like
Yeah.
if you're doing something
Or
that's bigger than just the
mm-hmm.
Instagram or just the social media, you have like a bigger purpose. It's actually going to help your Instagram, right? It's going to make you seem like a more
Yeah.
integrated person.
And also the sometimes I've been thinking like, okay, I can consume consciously where I do
Right.
like seeing other people's art. I do like it's like I get
That's
to go
true.
to this museum on my phone and sometimes I do need that to stimulate my own creative process. But before I was doing it in such a way of, oh, like let me just where I wasn't thinking about my creative process. All my energy was going into the consumption. And if you're just like overly consumed, and then you just want to like pass out or something. It's like
Yeah.
then I didn't have the energy. I was overeating.
Yeah. And you know what? And there's a time for that also. Like sometimes we just have to
Mm-hmm.
unwind and just kind of open up to whatever is around us. Yeah, Rick Rubin talks about that in his new book, actually. I
Oh,
have to bring up
cool.
Rick Rubin. I really like his new book. It's like my new Bible, honestly. It's
Oh,
just so packed
cool.
of wisdom. Yeah. He was in my dream the other day.
No
That's how
way.
much he's been like influencing me. Yeah, and I just recently read one of the chapters. He says that, there's a time for like opening yourself up, like going into the park and just like looking around and just like,
Yes.
not kind of finding something specific to focus on and whatever, but like there's a time for like openness and kind of letting energies, into you and just kind of like being open to inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
So there's definitely, and it's like both of those are important. You got to go back and
Yeah.
forth, I think,
I
especially as artists. And
yeah.
sorry, yeah, I just wanted to say like that's what I love about like being an artist is that like, we take inspiration from everywhere. And even
Yeah.
Instagram, like you're saying, it is kind of like a museum, right? Like we turn it into something positive, we turn it into something good. Always
Mm-hmm.
like there's a way to transmute that energy. Yeah.
Something I've learned that's been helping me fight is just the quick second of like, why am I doing this? Having
Yep.
that quick questioning, I think, can get you from, like you were saying, Rick Rubin said, being an open vessel, because we don't want to be that open vessel all the time. But when we aren't being conscious of why we're doing it, I think we are making ourselves open, and that's when we get too many tabs open. That's when we have too much information in our brain versus having that awareness of like, can I actually take in more information, or why am I doing this? And
Hmm.
that's even that question has creating like this little almost like ritual. It has like brought in a lot of like slowness for me, or reasoning instead of being on autopilot
For
of
sure.
I'm just going through my day. Like today I'm drinking coffee and I've stopped drinking coffee as much, but today
Mhm.
I was like, okay, I'm instead of just making it the habit that I drink coffee every day, today I'm like, okay, I am choosing to drink coffee because I want to create this connection. I like the warmth that the coffee is bringing me, instead of so just like questioning, taking like 5 seconds to question our actions.
And trying something different, right? Not being a
Yeah.
robot where you're stuck in these patterns, but like, oh, let me try it this way. Like for this podcast, actually, I turned my computer a different way. At first,
Cool.
I was like, no, like I don't want to do it different. And then I was like, hey, you know what? Why not? Let's try it a different way, right? A lot of
Mm-hmm.
times you'll find like there's so many other ways of doing things. And yeah, I guess like I was just gonna say it's funny because like I as a listener I might be confused because like at one point we're talking about like focusing and then we're talking about like being open, right? And it's like you need both of those things, right? It's like
You
it
do.
confuses me like wait, what are we
That's
actually saying
funny.
here, right?
That's funny.
But
And it
yeah,
is, I noticed, like, I mean, life is contradicting of
it
itself.
is.
It's
Yeah.
not, it's the darkness and the light. It's
Yep.
the, focusing and it's being closed and in your cocoon versus being open and the butterfly. But I think the important thing is knowing when to bring in each part, which is kind of work, or it's like a mental awareness of what do I call in, which is kind of like just creating a space that most people don't create in their day to day. And that goes
Mhm.
back to the slowness and the
Mhm.
pausing and being and sitting with yourself for 1 minute, 30 seconds, whatever you
Yeah.
can start with. It's like, I think our day to day is so much like go, 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 go
But
that,
then we get so exhausted, right? Then we get
yeah,
so like just like tired of it. And it's like you have to slow down for your own like health. More
yeah,
than that, that slowing down process, the more you slow down and you set an intention for what you're about to do next, you literally catapult yourself. You start like going so fast and doing it so like exactly how you
yes,
thought of it. Do you know what I mean? Um,
yes.
and I
So,
guess, mhm,
sorry, I was just gonna
sure.
reiterate on that thought of, because you think that you're not gonna get things done if you slow down. I, in the last few years, have been doing aerial silks, which is like kind of acrobatic things. And basically, I learned that when I would slow down and learn every movement
Mhm.
in a really slow pace, it allowed me to speed up because I was getting every movement like ingrained into my brain, that I was able to speed it up, and like I end up saving so much time later on. So I think
Yeah.
about that within the movements of life of, okay, I'm going to slow it down here, but when I learn how to do it correctly and keep learning it into my brain, I'm going to be able to pick it up and
Mhm.
bring in other things.
Totally. It's what is it like yeah, I made up this kind of mantra a long time ago. Perfect the form and function will follow, right? So it's like
Yes.
form is so important in everything in martial arts.
Oh, I
I
like
just
that.
recently, I've been needing to work out more, and being the nerd that I am, I asked ChatGPT. I was like, can you plan me like a basic like calisthenics workout, right? For beginners, right? And it
Uh-huh.
literally it like said all these things, like it was like, push-ups for this, all these repetitions, whatever. And at the end it had some tips, and one of them is like, go slow and focus on the
Yes.
form. Like,
Yeah.
especially when you're starting out, focus on making the form as good as it can be. I was like,
Yes.
Chat GPT is telling me this. Like
Damn, yeah.
a computer is telling me this. It's so funny.
Chat is
Um,
like Yoda.
yeah, dude, it is such a useful tool. It's literally gonna be it's the next iteration of Google. Like it can
Wow.
search the internet, it can search all these sites and get you exactly the information you need.
Wow.
You just have to be able to ask it like the right question, and then you can
Hmm.
like mess around so much with it. It is literally gonna change everything. And okay, so what we're talking about, it reminds me of two quotes. One of them is that the unexamined life is not worth living. I think that's what Socrates said, right?
Mm.
Where I love what you're saying. It's like taking that moment for being like conscious, for asking yourself, well, why am I doing this? Like
Yeah.
checking in with yourself, right? I think that's
Yeah.
so important because yeah, I mean, we're here to be conscious. We're here to be aware. That's one of our biggest powers as human beings. That's something machines will never have. They'll never be able to or maybe they will. I don't know.
I
What is
know. I was
awareness,
like,
right? What is consciousness? Like
yeah,
really,
yeah.
And then the other quote is that it keeps coming back recently. I've literally been saying this to everyone. And I'm not sure if William Shakespeare said this, but I feel as though the sentiment has been echoed a lot through history recently, or like, in the past, through history, which is basically it's not that things are good and bad, but thinking makes it so.
Yes,
You
but
know,
thinking
it
that it is makes it so.
right, because
Yeah,
reality, life as it is what it is already.
yeah.
There's no there, you can't add anything to it, you can't remove anything from it. It's already what it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times we get stuck in our head. Like, I know I do, like that's been such an issue for me throughout my life. Like, I'm in my head and I'm thinking about things and I'm
Yes, yeah,
projecting things before they've even
yes,
actually, before I've even actually even tried it out. I already think
yeah,
like negatively about it, or I don't want to do it, or
yes,
something.
yeah,
And it like prevents us from experiencing life as it is, like really jumping in with both feet, as they
yeah.
say.
It definitely is. Everything is perception. Yesterday,
Mhm,
I was in a store and it was raining really hard here. Um, and I was excited that it was raining because I was like, I'm going to be inside and I'm just going to be like creating. So the rain is like the perfect kind of excuse that it's going to be in. So I was leaving the
mhm.
store and I was like, or this guy that was working there was like, how's your day? I was like, oh, it's really good. I'm so happy about the rain. And he was like, you're the first person all day to say that. Everybody else is so upset about the rain. And I was
Wow.
like, yeah. And I was like, that's so funny because it's literally just perception.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
the rain is what it is. It's just
Right.
rain. But it's those
Um,
people saying it's negative versus me
it's like,
being
in painting and in art, contrast is so important. It's probably one of the most powerful things you could do, right? You need the light and the dark in a painting. And in photographs, right, like lighting for
yes,
movies and stuff. Even in music, like you need those ups and downs. You need a moment of tension that gets built up, and then like you release that tension, and it
yeah.
feels good. There's these ups and downs, there's the waves, you know what I mean, throughout all of life. Like if you get into that rhythm of the waves, then you can really kind of rise above it, I guess, or I don't know. So I love rain too. Like, you got to appreciate it. Like that's something, again, like I think that artists would appreciate, even the dark times, like even the negativity,
Hmm.
you can use it for something. And so, yeah, I guess I wanted to touch in a little more about, you said, your friend, who, Shelby, I think her name was, right?
Yes.
So I just wanted to kind of like, pay her, some respect, because
Mm,
she clearly like affected the world in such a big way, and
yeah. Ooh,
even,
gives me chills.
yeah, I've heard you talk about her. Obviously, I'm not sure if I ever met her, but I feel like I know her. It's so weird. Like,
Yeah.
from you've told me some stories about her, and I think that's just another one of those things. Even when we lose something, we gain something else.
Hmm.
Like, and so, yeah, I guess, what would you say, like, first of all, that how has that inspired your art, or like what did that do for your expression?
For my expression, it made me realize, I think it was the first time I was 22 years old, and so was she when she passed. And it just made me realize how it kind of shattered this bubble idea that you have as a young person that, like, everything is wonderful and you're invincible. And
Mm,
it kind of shows almost like the real dangers of the world and the real, like, it was the first time that someone's death who had been in my life every single day, that they weren't going to be in my life anymore. And also she is still in my life in a new way, which is interesting.
mm,
But it kind of, I was like, oh my gosh, like we die. I was like, I can't believe, it was like the first
yeah.
time that like I
Yep.
really was conceptualizing the fact that we die. So I was like, I don't want to be afraid of being myself anymore. I don't want to like think about like how weird it is if I wore like a tutu to a restaurant, or like did my makeup all funny, like these tiny tiny ways, because Shelby was all about, she was so confident in being herself, and she was such a bright light, and she was so funny. She was never afraid of like being the attention of the room and being the center of the room, that I was like, I need to be more like she was. Like, she had only 22 years of this earth, and she used it like she was herself. She was this bright energy, and it's like she didn't know she only had that much time. And also maybe there was something within her that she did know, like there is something that's a whole other, but I
Mhm.
feel like, someone who really used her time in a way that she was confident. She loved making other people, even if she wasn't feeling good, she was making other people feel good, and she was really spreading that sunshine energy that she had. So that was a really, really big step for me, of being like, you know what? I don't know how much time I have. Why am
Yeah.
I wasting my time worrying about what other people are thinking? Like, that is so silly, because this is my life.
Mm.
One day I'm not going to be here anymore. I have such limited time. What do I want to do with this time? And so,
Amazing. Yeah. Like
yeah. And so I'm like,
like death being generative for life, right?
yes, 100%. It is so generative to me, and so like life affirming. And
Mhm.
it's interesting to me when people don't want to talk about death, but I'm like, how do we not talk about death when it's like, it's what creates life. It gives me
Totally.
so much life to think about. And maybe that's also, I never put it together, but you know how like the procrastinators that like work on a project like the last night that you
Yeah.
have it because time's running out. Like, maybe
Right.
that's why it's inspiring to me, because I'm like, oh wait, oh my god, no, how much time do we have?
Right.
Like, let's
Yes.
do
Totally.
it.
Yeah,
I
for
never put
sure.
it together
No,
until now.
and that's fine. Yeah, it really like I know it's kind of dark, and I feel like as kids, it's almost like we might even see it, but we don't really think into it. I remember like I think I was 15 or 14 when I let myself think about like
Wow.
like what if I was to die, right? Like I let
Wow.
myself think about it, and I just couldn't imagine it. It was so like I still remember that feeling of like, how could I not exist? Like, like I've
Yeah.
always been there, right? Like I've
Wow.
always like been there. Like how could I not be there at all?
Hmm.
And it just like and not it just kind of yeah, it sprung me into more life. I don't know if you had like near death experiences, but I just remember that I was basically like, well, if I'm gonna live, I'm gonna live fully. Like I'm gonna live
Yeah.
authentically, and I'm gonna do
Yeah.
everything that I can, like just to like I guess shine, or like just to be myself, like we have this chance right now. We wanted to be here. Like as
Yeah.
souls, like I really truly believe we chose to be here,
Yeah.
um and and like now we're here, like we made it already, like we already
Hmm.
won, like we're already like champions in a way, just that we're existing,
Yeah.
and like not getting into all these like judgments of like, oh, who you're supposed to be, or what does society want out of you, or like what your parents like told you to be and like pushed you into. Like none of that matters at all, you know what I mean? It only
Exactly.
matters how you see yourself, that's the
Yeah.
only thing that matters.
100%.
I truly believe that. Yep. And so again, like, I mean, I feel as though like, what do you think of like artists? I feel as though they process darkness, right? Like a lot. Like it's a lot of the artistic mindset. And it feels as though, yeah, like your art has been very generative because you've processed that like darkness, right? Like, would you say that? Or?
Yeah, definitely. And also, I don't think all artists are processing. I would
Hmm.
like to think that they are. I think most artists probably do process within their own time, because even just sitting with yourself and drawing, you have to sit with yourself. You have to sit in,
Yes.
so you have to be okay with sitting in yourself, and in those moments you process. But I do think personally I've done a lot of processing, and art really has helped me process. Um a lot of, I don't have it with me, but there's this painting that I started on one of the death anniversaries of Shelby's death anniversary,
Mhm.
and I would just like I had all these emotions and I didn't know what to do with it. So I just started like putting paint down, and I think it's really great because it's like doing something with the energy. Like before it was just like knots within
Yeah.
myself, but
Hmm.
then using paint, it like literally comes out of me and it doesn't I don't
Perfect.
have to
Yeah.
sit with it anymore.
I,
And
I was just about to ask you, yeah, like what are your mediums for creation, like, and also what is your process? That's what I'm like really interested in.
mhm.
How does your art come about?
There's it's interesting. So I started with like, I have the t-shirts and I have screen prints and I do some like graphic designs. A lot of times, a lot of my art has messages in it, and it'll just like randomly come through, and I will write it down. I have like a bunch of like sticky notes of random quotes that come through to me, and then sometimes I don't do anything with it, and then
Okay.
later on, I'm like, I a lot of it is gut feeling. Something else I've realized is that like the gut feelings can come and the thoughts can come, but what's really important is the follow through.
Mhm.
And I had to teach myself how to follow through with, okay, I have like a gut feeling. I have to at least like draw it out, or I have to just start the project. I have to just do it and see what comes from it
Mhm.
because, yeah, a lot of my mediums currently, I love oil painting. That was like one of my first like loves with
Mhm.
an as an artist
I
and
need to get
medium.
into that. I've never tried oil painting. My dad was doing
It's
that a lot. I
yeah,
really want to
and
get into it.
there's something to it that's just different than acrylic for me,
Yeah.
and it's like it's definitely slow, and the blending of it is so beautiful. Um, and then also I like I said I screen print, but I've been painting on secondhand fabrics and kind of making those like little paintings and doing like patches or creating like this is all secondhand fabrics and
Oh,
I'm
you
like
made
using
that.
it to yes, I did make this. And
Wow.
on the back there's oh, wait, I'm gonna unplug for a second.
For sure.
There's like the mushrooms. Um so I've been like kind of
So cool.
drawing. Thank you. And
Hmm.
I've been like drawing with kind of like cutting out images on second fabrics and sewing it onto clothes because I'm like, how do we make clothes be more of our expression? We walk around and it's like I don't want to think of it as an ad, but it's a space to get into like what you have on your clothing can get into somebody else's brain. So why not make it a place, make it an art piece that we're putting out like love and these good images that can like seep into other people's brains. So I've been like, okay, how do I make clothes? Clothes have become kind of like my canvas of like, how do we
Amazing.
make clothes into like wearable art? Like, how do we express ourselves and become more individualized through our clothing and what we're creating while also remembering to take care of Earth and doing upcycled things?
Hmm.
To me, upcycling is really important. So everything that I use, all my canvases are all secondhand canvases that friends either give me or I find. All the clothes are secondhand, the fabrics I use. Um, so a lot of the
I love that so much. Yeah. Sorry, I just want to just
no,
say because like I'm just so inspired by you. Yeah, like our clothes are definitely like an expression of us. And I love that you use recyclable stuff. So it's like it's good for the planet, it's sustainable, and then it's like this unique expression. And so
mhm,
not just that we wear things to express ourselves, but like a part of it is also supporting artists also who are making these things, like such as yourself.
mm,
And I'm gonna link to your page, Metamorphosis Apparel, is it right?
it's my Instagram is metamorphosis.mindset
Yep,
and my
got it.
website is metamorphosis.love.
Okay, nice. And so you also do some like workshops and stuff, or rather like you do I know you set up booths for people to buy your stuff, right? You're like pretty active in your
Hmm.
community, it sounds like, and
I've Yeah, I've definitely been going into that more, and I'm like, okay, I've been in my um cocoon shell for a
Cocoon.
really long time that it's finally time to open up and share
Yes.
these things that I've been making in this little space with the world, because I do believe I have a good message. So
You have a
I've
great
been slowly
message.
getting into that. Thank you very
Hmm.
much. It's hard. Sometimes you're so in your own world that you forget, you're just like, this is the normal, and you forget that like other people actually need to hear this too. Because I'm like, everybody else is thinking about this. And it's like,
Right.
no,
Mhm.
like you kind of have to, it's
You gotta be
important to go out
loud.
into the world.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
you just gotta tell everyone what you're doing. Yeah, no matter what, like, and yeah, I mean, that's great. I guess our time is running out a little bit. I don't want to make it too long, but I
Yeah.
just wanted to ask, what are your plans for the future? Like, what are you envisioning in the next couple of years for you, or where's all
Oh, I
this
like that.
going?
So I want Metamorphosis to be more than just clothing. I've really worked hard on my mindset and how to better myself, how to sit with my grief. I want Metamorphosis to be a place for other people to be able to heal as well. And I'm still thinking about what that fully means. I want to have grief workshops. I currently volunteer as a grief facilitator for hospice.
Wow,
And I want to kind of make that option available, that tool available for other people. I want to, yeah, just help people sit with themselves, help people connect with nature, help people enjoy what they have in their everyday life, because I think that's also what death has brought me, the realization of how amazing all this little things that we have, the fact that we can connect, the people in your life that matter, the coffee that you drink, just the little moments are truly everything. And I really would love to help people get to that point while also still creating. I want to paint more. I haven't been doing oil painting as much. I want to do oil painting. I want to do big paintings. I want to do
mm,
murals. I
me
want
too.
to be, yeah, we should. I want to be out in the world more. I need to put my light out in the world. I need, yeah, just continue this flow of confidence and this flow of light coming
For
through
sure.
and
Yeah.
helping others.
I mean, we think of life as like so big sometimes, but really like the now is all that it actually exists. Everything has happened now, like I always say that. Okay, and then if you could just be so kind, really quick, do you have any advice for the younger generation, for maybe the newer artists that are coming up? Like, do you have anything
Yeah.
you'd want them to know? Maybe to your younger self?
Honestly, just create. Don't think about the outcome. If that means use what you already have. You have a notebook, you have crayons, you have pencils, you have markers. Just start putting things down. Like my favorite creating time is when I literally just like have a pen and I doodle. And a lot of my thoughts come out during that time of doodling. And that's how one of the times where I like connect with myself the deepest. Like, don't think about if this looks like anything or perfection. Just let your hand flow, let colors mix. Like you were saying in the beginning of the podcast, I truly believe every single person is creative. They are an artist. That doesn't mean you have to, your art doesn't have to be perfection. Art is not perfection. Creativity is not perfection. See, like, yeah, just let things flow. We are
Perfect.
our biggest enemies and our biggest stoppers. And
Totally.
yeah,
No expectations.
yeah.
Yeah, and I just really, before I forget, I want to say I still have I think when you were first starting out, you sent me that poster and it just says like, today is a great
Yes.
day, right? I still have that.
Yes. Oh, wait. Today is a great day to
It's
be
still right
alive.
there. Perfect. That's
Yeah.
like one of the first things you did, right?
Yeah. And that was
That's
definitely
amazing.
inspired by Shelby. And
Oh,
that
okay.
definitely
Good.
just continued my flow of, yeah, wanting to put love and good messages out.
Amazing. Yeah, and really quick before we get to the end here, this is probably going to be the longest podcast I've had so far, which is great. I feel like we've really got into
Oh,
some good stuff here. Hopefully, there's some people get a lot of value from this. But basically, yeah, you went on a trip to Europe recently, right?
Yes.
And I think you were telling me you went to some museums and stuff, some art museums.
So I went to Barcelona. In Barcelona, there's the Picasso Museum, and then about an hour and a half train ride outside of Barcelona is Salvador Dali's museum. And he grew up in this town. So this was a theater that he grew up in that got burned down, and his last 10 years of life, he basically bought it and just reinvented the theater to be his museum. And he really worked on making it like a theatrical experience for your mind. And it was probably the best museum I've ever been to. And I mean, I've known, obviously everyone knows like some Salvador Dali works and things like that, but to see his progress of his work, of like he started things out being able to paint really wonderful realism of, and especially he grew up, that was probably like the early 1900s, just this amazing realism and oil paintings. And you could see the portraits he was painting at like 20 years old, and this woman's back that has like shows all the muscles. And then he like slowly starts getting into what he's kind of more known for. And it kind of becomes more of an illusion in his work, and he kind of breaks it down while still using that realism, while also playing with like pen work of line work, and how to really break down something that was like so detailed into how your brain fits in the image by just using a couple lines, and how we're able to
it's more like psychological, right, or something.
Yes, in surrealism.
It's surrealism, right? And like almost like absurdism, right? Because some of his paintings just, he mixes like the real with the fantasy, you know. That's so cool. It's like, I think, you know, he is definitely a very kind of controversial figure from what I understand too. And he kind of like, I think, you know, but as an artist, he did some good stuff, right?
Oh yeah. And just the way that you can tell that he really just followed his path while also being influenced by other artists. And he even had like a portrait of Picasso there. And you could tell that other artists influenced him of the times. But from all his pieces, it's like this man never stopped working. And I don't think, and it's like, we kind of talk about that. We talked about that, of like that being today's time. But there's something different about it, of it seemed like he just kept like going into his own calling of creating. I don't even know if he thought about it as work, where it's like, it's clear that he had this energy or this inkling inside of him where he just needed to create. And that's, you know, and he kept doing it. And I'm sure there's so many pieces and things that he created that did not look good. Nobody understood. But in the overall bigger picture of his portfolio, you kind of see the process. And I think that process is really important as an artist. Of, you never know, like, I think it really just taught me, like, just keep making things, because it's gonna teach you some little thing from this painting is going to help you with the next painting. And, you know, you're going to kind of understand that process. And he really just thought outside the box. Like, my mind was like blown, because you can look at a painting and see it up close and then walk away, and it's actually a completely different painting. And then the walls around that painting are like some sort of art thing. And he really just like, I think he was able to communicate what was going on in his mind, and the warp and the whatever was going on, through his paintings, of like, just the surrealism of the melting of the, not everything is as you see it.
Right, which kind of, you know, gets to maybe a better, more realistic perspective of reality as it is, right? It's not always so black and white. There's always like a hidden kind of aspect to it. And also that, you know, if you're an artist or whatever it is that you do, it's almost like you have a responsibility to society to keep doing it, right? To do that thing. And also it just makes me think of how, like whatever it is you're meant to do, when you're doing it, time kind of becomes irrelevant, and you could just
Yeah.
kind of keep going forever. You get into this kind of space of eternity, like
Mhm.
foreverness, right?
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I know he left a great legacy. It just reminds me of my friend Ernie Legg. He has this tattoo of those like those elephants with the long legs.
Oh yeah.
And so, like his, Salvador Dali's legacy has been, definitely survived. Definitely is
Yeah.
still influencing us to this day.
Yeah.
Um,
And also, I think it's less because when we put the pressure on what we're supposed to do, that's such a deep pressure versus finding the things that you can lose time in, and those end up being the things that you're supposed to do. Does
right.
that make sense? So I think,
Yes.
like, to me, I realized that painting, I lose time and I have this excitement with painting. I'm like, okay, I'm going to just keep following that feeling.
Yes.
In my latest years, I've been like mushroom foraging, and that is another thing that has induced these feelings of excitement of like finding the mushrooms, but also time just like passes. So I think the key, or not the key, but there's many keys. I think because I was just talking to somebody about like, how do you find these things that like that you're passionate about, the things that inspire you? I think just follow the feelings of like, there's something within me that has been interested in mushrooms. So I'm going to start maybe looking at mushrooms and see where that leads me. Or I've been thinking about painting. So I'm just going to take a painting class. And
Yeah.
it's like, you don't find these big things that inspire you right away. And it's like this deep, passionate love. It's like, no, it actually builds. And sometimes you find that deep, passionate love by doing something that led you there. And so I think with like Salvador Dali, it's clear that he just kept the momentum going. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, maybe this painting didn't work, but I'm just going to keep that momentum going over here. And you can see all his different styles throughout
He
his
kept
life.
exploring, right? He kept like kind
Exactly.
of going into these new areas, going into the darkness, right? And kind of
Yeah.
finding these new places which haven't been brought to
Hmm.
light yet, you could say,
Being
and it's
uncomfortable.
yes, and it kind of made the world better for all of us. It opened up
Yeah.
this new thing through his own perspective, through his own vision that he was
Yes.
able to leave us. That's amazing. Yeah. I think we had a pretty good talk already.
Yeah.
And so it's funny because this morning, something popped up for me. I think you might be following him too. Niche, Niche,
Yeah.
the Instagram. Anyways, they had a Salvador Dali quote on there, and I feel like
Oh,
it would be a really good ending point for this podcast. Thank you so much for being here, Stacie.
thank
And
you so
thank
much for
you.
having me.
Yup, I'm gonna put all your links in the captions, and I'm gonna be shouting you out with the reels and everything. I think we got some good content here,
Yeah.
to be completely honest. And yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on. It's been truly a blessing. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much. This is
And
so lovely.
yeah, the quote by Salvador Dali is, he says, "Every morning upon awakening, I experience a supreme pleasure, that of being Salvador Dali.
Mm.
And I ask myself, wonder-struck, what prodigious thing will he do today, this Salvador Dali?"
Wow, I love that.
I think it's so good, right?
That's
It's
such
like,
a good way of, yes, he's like, I get to be this and I get to experience this life from this perspective. And I think all of us, we get to be ourselves, and that is our greatest power. And what can we
exactly.
bring into the world?
Yep, yep, exactly. If everyone thought that way, just the immense gratitude that he had, just for being alive, right? Just for witnessing this miracle. And we I feel like if we all took on that perspective of just like, I get to be this person, this unique
Hmm.
person, then I think the whole world would be better.
I
But
think so too.
yep. But anyways,
That's
yeah. Okay.
wonderful.
Well, hey, thank you so much. I think we'll be talking soon, and everyone, thanks for tuning in, and remember to be your own unique you, the only you that's ever been and that ever will be. You're the fruit of life, right?
Exactly.
Hey, you made it to the end. You get a gold star. Seriously, thank you so much. You are supporting what I am doing here just by listening, and I appreciate that a whole lot. Ever since I can remember, and it feels like forever, I have been fascinated with what all this is. Being, life, and the nature of reality in general. It is now my hope to traverse these different facets and expand consciousness together with you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for being here. If you find that you enjoy listening, please subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and/or comment, as it shows the algorithm what I'm doing here is truly worthwhile and helps me reach more people. And if for any reason you wish to reach out, I am on Instagram at Dimitri Make Love. That's DimitryMakeLove. Have an amazing day. Remember, all is one. IO. And until next time.